Welcome to Thieves Cant, a tabletop gaming podcast with your hosts, Jeremy Shane and Chris White.
Welcome in and welcome back. It's Thieves Cant, Saturday, March 22nd. Chris White is in the house.
Hello, everyone.
I'm Jeremy Shane. Glad to have you along for episode 4. Chris, you doing all right today?
I'm doing great, and it's great to be here.
You seem a little giggly over there.
I am. It's the coffee's warm, the air is stale, and I'm doing wonderful.
All right. Feel like you're looking at my hair. You're making me self-conscious.
Well, there is a story here. Jeremy just had to take his hat off because it was banging into the microphone, and
I refuse to turn it backwards.
Right. And his hair, as always, looks fabulous. It's incredible, but he's self-conscious right now. So
I took this hat off, and I don't know what I'm dealing with here.
Yeah.
I don't have a mirror handy.
It's great.
Probably for the best. So we're just going to let it ride.
Yeah.
Enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Coming up today, we've got a crowdfunding segment spotlighting a fun new take on the classic card game War. You know War, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But this one is with kitty cats.
Oh, all right.
So get ready for that one. Our main topic today, all about GM tips. It's a Thieves Cant Top 5. I'm excited for that one. But first, we jump into the news. Okay, it was just a few short weeks ago that we heard that WotC had officially launched the beta of Sigil over on D&D Beyond. And now, Chris, we've got an update on the project. There have been significant layoffs to the Sigil VTT team. Upwards of 90% of the staff supporting Sigil have been let go. First of all, before we react to the implications of that, I feel for anyone in this situation who unexpectedly loses work, loses their livelihood, and now is scrambling to find what their next step is going to be. So, man, that's a tough situation.
Yeah, I absolutely. My understanding is this wasn't a huge team, but 30 or so people lost their jobs, so that's not good. And these people were pretty dedicated to what they were doing. I'm shocked because I was really excited to try out Sigil, and I didn't, and apparently nobody else did either, because now it sounds like it's getting cut down to a skeleton crew to kind of keep things running.
Okay, so just to kind of suss out the story, they are going to keep it running. It is still on D&D Beyond. If you are a master tier subscriber there at that $4.58 a month, I think it is, then as that subscriber, you've got access to the tabletop, the maps, certain minis and different components. But it doesn't sound like there's going to be any new development. They are simply maintaining at this point.
Yeah, sounds like it's going to be like the encounter builder that they have, constantly in that state of beta. There's not a lot of progress happening.
Sure.
So it's going to be a feature that's stuck
and then
at the top of the bar,
right,
and you can use what's available, but that's it.
And for how long will even that be available? There's no guarantee that sticks around. If they're not going to develop it further, will they eventually just let this fade into the mists? I don't know what the future holds on this.
I don't either, and I'm interested to see how this affects Wizards of the Coast, how it affects their approach to D&D, because I think they were investing a lot in this project, and their assumption was this was sort of the future of the game. This was the direction. So with that ending so abruptly, it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here.
I mean, WotC cannot seem to get out of their own way in the digital space. We've seen this since 3rd edition days, right? 3rd edition Player's Handbook came with that CD with the character builder program. Do you remember this?
I do.
All right. And that was kind of a beta version of that. It had limited functionality, but the promise there was that this was going to be developed over time and continue to grow with the game. And, of course, that never happened. 4th edition launches. The back pages of the Player's Handbook, any of the core rule books, had those ads for the, 3D, not only character builder, but also a virtual tabletop. They had plans then that, for whatever reason, never made it past a certain point of development and got scrapped. And now we're seeing it once again these days. What is going on? Why can't WotC seem to get over the hump with this?
I don't know. And, really, if you think about it, D&D Beyond has been pretty successful. But that was prior to them being acquired by Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, it was a separate group that handled it.
Yeah, and I wish I could remember their name, and I can't right now. But that wasn't even WotC's development there. I mean, they had a third party that was doing all that for them. And it seems like since Wizards of the Coast took over, it's sort of gone downhill. You used to be able to buy items a la carte. For example, I love creating crazy characters, right? So I could go into the, whatever the book was that featured lizard people. And
sure.
I could purchase just that class as a playable race, and now I could use that in the builder. I loved that feature. Or maybe I just wanted the feats from this book, but
right.
I didn't care about anything else.
Or a spell.
I think a lot of people loved features like that, and all of that was taken away. It doesn't seem like they've been as reactive to some of the issues that have come up or incompatibility with classes and their features. So I don't know, and I'm not pointing the finger at anyone in particular, but you're absolutely right. It seems like Wizards of the Coast has a real problem with these digital tools, and in a lot of cases, there are people out there that do it better.
So we'll see where Sigil ends up, if down the road there will be further development, or if this is truly the end of the road. A lot of money, a lot of time, and just unveiled a few short weeks ago, and already, again, 90% of that dev team out the door. So one to watch. All right, staying in the digital space, the future of the Baldur's Gate series was teased. I don't know if you saw this, Chris.
I didn't.
Dan Ayub, he's Hasbro's senior vice president of digital games. He just dropped a hint. No firm details here, so sorry if I got you too excited. He simply said that updates will be shared in really short order concerning the future of the Baldur's Gate series. Sounds like there is something in the works. Now, I don't think it's going to be Larian Studios again.
Yeah, that's big.
Right. So here's the concern. We just talked about the issues that WotC has in the digital space.
Yeah.
So if they're promising more Baldur's Gate, in what form and who's going to be responsible? And are we really going to see it?
Larian is something special. That didn't happen overnight. They, with some of their previous games, they have been working in this format. They have been improving. So they are a rare and incredible talent in the gaming industry. And so if anybody else is making the game, immediately it calls into question, because D&D is a wonderful setting. We all love the Forgotten Realms. But I really do think at the end of the day, that game was special because there were some special people working on it. And so if they're not involved, that immediately puts up a lot of red flags. I think the only hope there is, can we duplicate the magic that they were able to put together?
And finally, Frosthaven, massive sequel to the massive Gloomhaven. Frosthaven is even more massiver. It's getting its own video game adaptation. Arc Games has revealed its adaptation, being developed by Snapshot Games. There's a beta test coming really soon, March 27th. You can sign up for the beta, and you can get in and start playing your beloved Frosthaven board game in the digital space. I have yet to get you to sit down and join me for some Gloomhaven.
Well, I think a good 3 to 4 hour session of Helldivers might motivate me to help you, to join you. No, now you all have played Gloomhaven. You're familiar with it. How would you say that? Do you think that would translate well to a board game or to a video game?
No, it really does translate well. I've actually got the video game adaptation of Gloomhaven, so I imagine Frosthaven will translate equally well. This is a turn-based game. It's a fantasy world. You go on adventures, but it's board game form. Again, the turn-based dynamic really makes it conducive to a video game adaptation. Plus, the video game handles all of the, for lack of a better term, AI components of the board game that require a lot of setup and management on the player's part when you're playing, around the table. You put that in the video game space, that's all managed for you, but you get the same feeling of play because it still boils down to that turn-based strategical think. Strategical?
I think that's a word, isn't it? I'm sure I've used it.
It involves strategy. We'll put it that way. So there's a beta test coming again, March 27th, if you want to check that out. I got to get you in on this Gloomhaven and Frosthaven scene, Chris.
It does sound fun.
I think you'd dig it.
I need to catch up.
Yeah. All right, so that is it for the news. Boy, pretty digital heavy in the news there.
Yeah, it was.
Let's get back to analog, on to crowdfunding. We are spotlighting a lesser-known project today over on Kickstarter. This one is Kitten Apocalypse War. Did you ever play the card game War?
It's been a long, long time.
You don't finish until one player has taken all of the cards, every card of the deck, and that's how you declare a winner. So this is a reimagining of that classic game with a feline twist. You've got fun, deranged, cat-themed art, plus special attacks and different strategies that you can use to outmaneuver opponents. For example, one of the special maneuvers that I saw on the demo video, you can play a card that will force another player to only say meow for the rest of the game. If they say anything else, they automatically lose.
Sounds like a drinking game.
A little bit, right?
I think they should advertise this as war. War never changes until kittens.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah, and this is one of those small box games that end up being some of your favorites. Some of our favorite games to play at my house end up being just those little one-offs, unassuming, and it ends up just being a great time. $25 for this one to back just for a single deck, and that'll get you a lot of fun. There is, I think, a $100 level that gets you a couple of sets and like an expansion all in like a deluxe cat box. But that's if you're a hardcore, if you want to go all in.
I would also like to point out there's a Thieves Cant special edition that's going to be available for $200. You can have everything in the deluxe set, and we'll throw in an actual live kitten. But you better act quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't wait to open it. That is going to fund through April 17th, and it's going to fulfill really quickly. The estimated arrival is September of this year. So you can be playing Kitten Apocalypse War here in 2025.
Very nice.
All right, so that's it for crowdfunding. We are on to our main topic. It is a Thieves Cant Top 5. Last week, it was all about GM regrets. So everybody loves a good comeback story. We're talking GM tips. Our top 5, these are in no particular order. Chris, you and I just put our heads together and said, what are some practical tips to help streamline our games, to help us focus on what's important at the table and run the best game for our friends that we possibly can?
Yeah, and the understanding is we're not the experts, certainly. However,
no.
But we've just...
Not on anything, really.
No, we aren't. But we've been so good at making mistakes over the years that every once in a while something sticks and we realize that maybe that wasn't a good idea and we should try to avoid it in the future. And a few things that actually ended up working well somehow.
We're also just really good at making lists.
Yeah. We're big on lists, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to get us started with our first in our top 5?
Absolutely.
All right. Number 1.
You need to own the rules. You need to be able to tweak them to suit your campaign and be prepared to get rid of what doesn't work for your group.
So by own the rules, you're not necessarily saying learn and master the rules, have them memorized, start to finish, and never let something fall through the cracks. That's not what you're saying.
I hope not, because I haven't done that myself.
Right.
So, yeah. No, the whole point is you need to, first of all, recognize your group. Recognize what everyone enjoys and what they don't. At the end of the day, we're supposed to have fun. We're telling a story. We're having fun. The rules are important because they let us do that. They sort of act as an arbiter. But don't let them overcome you. If there's a rule that's rubbing you the wrong way or that doesn't work for what you're trying to do, be prepared to get rid of it and talk to your players about that.
Can you think of some rules that you have changed or that you have cut away altogether in your games?
I can. Right now I'm running sort of a quasi Dark Sun setting. There's some homebrew inside of it, but what I realized was I really wanted the survival aspects of this game to hit hard. And it didn't seem like traditional spell casting in many ways was what we needed.
To clarify, you're running this in 5th edition D&D.
This is 5e. Yes, this is in 5e with most options enabled. So I started doing a little searching, and I came across a YouTube channel, House DM, and he actually talked about how he had stopped using spell slots for his game. He has an alternate method where basically you can cast as much as you want, but every time you cast, you have to make a roll. If you fail to make that roll, you lose access to that spell until you have a long rest. Well, that sounds good for most campaigns, but I realized, and this is really where the survival aspect came in, it was such a big deal, was he also had listed rules for limiting long rest. A long rest could only be taken at a place that the dungeon master had established as one where a long rest could be taken. So it wasn't just camping at the roadside. It was an inn, or it was, a glen that could be secured and everyone could let their guard down. It had to be a very specific place. And so now, and you've experienced this with your druid, when you lose those spells, it hurts because you don't know when the next long rest will come.
Right. It makes me clench up a little every time I make that spell check, not going to lie.
Well, what it did in that case, and this again goes in the idea of owning the rules. I was looking at spells like Goodberry, create water. Those things really undermined what, as a DM, I saw the challenge to be, because I wanted the environment to be as much of a challenge to the players as any creature they might encounter. I wanted to feel like the world is working against you. It's an enemy that you're having to fight in itself. And so what this allowed me to do was, instead of banning spells like Goodberry, it's just that over time, they're probably going to lose access to them, right? So I'm not smacking that cool, toy you have out of your hand.
Right.
But instead, it's just recognizing that the more you use it, it's going to break at some point.
Yeah. I like that perspective. And it does create a different feel at the table. Not better, not worse. Fun for this situation, for this specific game. Again, own the rules. Know how much you need and what you can let slide. Don't be afraid to tap other players to help you manage rules. My 4th edition campaign years ago, there were a couple of rules that I could never keep locked in my head, and they were rules that came up every single session. And so I knew, look, somebody's got to keep track of this. I can never remember because I'm juggling too many other balls. Hunter, can you please just stay on top of this rule, and every time it comes up, just remind the group what it is. Yeah, task a player with that. Make it part of their role.
That's a great idea. There's no reason why you have to do all the work. There are some things that players can help you with. That's a great point.
All right. Okay, so again, own the rules, tweak them to suit your campaign, and don't be afraid to get rid of what you don't need. Number 2, keep handy resources available at the table. And that's going to mean different things to different people. For me, I like to have a list of names ready to go, and not just for NPCs, but also for places, locations. So maybe some random tables to roll on, lists, random tables, and plenty of scrap paper. Those are my go-to resources.
Yeah, there's certain things. I mean, when you're having to reference something over and over and over, find a way to put it there. A lot of people utilize GM screens. I don't know. Sometimes I question if the people who design the layout for those actually play the game, because it's like, is this what I needed? Is this really,
right? Was
this that helpful? But at the same time, there's a lot of GM screens that can be customized now, all sorts of options. Use those, for, 5e as an example, those effects like paralyzed, poison. That list is invaluable to me. It's to have that at hand and, okay, that's what the effects does. I can see it right here. I can tell the player. I can share that. But as you mentioned earlier, utilize the players too. Tracking initiative. I've seen a lot of DMs put cards over the screen.
Sure.
And those cards will have player statistics. So there's all sorts of neat stuff you can incorporate there. But sometimes it's just as simple as having a notepad, like you said, a scratch piece of paper and a pencil, and just being able to write down and make those notes. Also, me, I take the worst notes ever, if at all. So having players that take notes is great. How many times do I have to ask the players, hey, you guys remember what the name of that NPC Thrycreen was?
Right.
Yeah. It says it right here. Okay, cool. Yeah, you see him again? Because I'm not the best note taker. That's true. But there's all sorts of resources that you can use to help.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one. This is a big one.
Number 3.
Session 0.
Definitely should be on the top 5.
Session 0. So this is where we get started. This is sort of the campaign before the campaign, I suppose. The session before the campaign really begins. And what Session 0 lets you do more than anything is set expectations, right? This is where we're going to talk about those rules that we've considered changing and get party input on those things. This is where we're going to talk about characters. Maybe this is where we build our characters. So there's a lot that happens in a Session 0, and this is how you get off on the right foot for any campaign.
I think so. And I say that as someone, and you share this history. We never grew up playing in campaigns that had Session 0s. It was never part of our practice. The word was put out, hey, I'm gonna start a campaign. We'll kick it off this weekend. This is the system that we're playing. And just make a character, show up. All right. And then you kind of have to reverse engineer some things to make everything fit. As you said, Chris, what a Session 0 allows you to do is provide all that context up front before characters are made. Here's the game. Here's the system. Here's the world. Now let's make characters that fit into that world, rather than have to retroactively make the world fit the character that you brought in. There's nothing worse than a character that just does not mesh with the rest of the party, doesn't really have a place in the setting for a GM to have to scramble and patch things to make that fit. That can be a lot of extra work that could easily be avoided.
If you're going to play an Oath of Devotion Paladin, you need to talk to your GM before and say, hey, are there going to be undead or demons or or fiends in this adventure? Because if there aren't, a lot of my features aren't going to be effective. Ask the GM, hey, I'm going to play a bard that's really focused on, persuasion, and he's a smooth talking politician. Well, we need to know, is this any of that intrigue or any of that?
No, I was just going to run a dungeon crawl.
Right.
Okay, well, I might make a different character then.
Yeah, you might not want to play the politician in the dungeon crawl. So, or you might, I don't know.
That could be fun.
But, yeah, it's just understanding what everybody wants out of the game, what everybody expects out of the game, and really it helps avoid disappointment down the line. Now, do you think there should it be focused on preparation for play, or do you think there ought to be some play involved in Session 0?
So my ideal Session 0, and this is just me, you do Session 0 how you like it. I like to cover that initial context. I like for characters to be created then after that context is established. I like for relationships to be established between those characters. All right, decide all of that up front, and then I really like to budget my time in that session so that we have enough time at the end for an encounter, something, whether that's combat if the game calls for it, or it's an opening scene just to establish kind of the onboarding, just to hook the players for that next session. What about you?
Yeah, I completely agree. Sometimes you can add some variance here in a Session 0 where it's not just, okay, you're in a tavern, you see other adventurers, there's an orc attack.
Yeah,
And sometimes that's what it is, but sometimes it allows you to sort of build in a backstory that links characters together as well. So I think there's an opportunity there.
All right. So the importance of session 0, we can't stress it enough. Number 4, let's talk game prep. You've got to learn to prioritize. I tend to be, well, I wanted to say I tend to be over-prepared for games, but I've certainly been caught flat-footed enough times where I don't know if that's necessarily true. So maybe it's just a case of I am preparing, just not the right stuff.
Well, I don't know that I have a lot to add about game prep. I'm terrible. You know what? Here's my number 1 tip in regards to game prep. Truthfully, do it immediately after the session's over. That's my number 1 tip. It really is, because the game prep that I get done is the game prep that I do about 30 minutes after everybody's left. And then after that, who knows? Right?
There's no guarantee.
Life gets in the way.
Yes, it does.
I get lazy. I forget. All of a sudden it's game day and I'm like, oh, I'm not prepared. Right? So when everything is fresh on your mind, you remember the name of that Thrycreen that the party talked to, you go back and just do your prep then. If you can do your prep immediately after, I think it's the best time. And maybe some people have other experiences.
In terms of immediately following the game, what I like to do at the least is write up a paragraph summary of what happened. And then if you need to do more prep later on, at least you've got that you wrote fresh off the game. You're not scrambling to piece it all back together. So at least do a write-up, 15 minutes after the game. And then you can put that in your drawer and come back to it.
There is one other thing I think is really helpful with this, and I've noticed that good GMs often do it, and that is at the end of the session, they'll just ask the players, "What do you guys think you're going to do next time?"
Yeah.
What are your plans going forward?
Oh, that's good. That's a key aspect of prep, right?
Yeah, because sometimes they will surprise you. The players' motivations may not be obvious. Your thought is, "Oh, I bet they're going to go after the Lich and they're going to try to storm the castle." But their thought is, "We're going to go back to the city and try to reprovision and see if we can't get some magical items that'll help us." Well, those are 2 completely different sessions to prep for, right? So, my suggestion is if you can eke out, and sometimes that's difficult because sometimes the players are just as surprised by what they're going to do as you are, right? But if you can get from them an idea of what they're thinking is their next course of action, that can help a lot with prep. All right. Our final tip is to immerse yourself in the sort of stories that you enjoy, the kind that inspire you, both real and pretend.
Just simply find the stories that inspire you and spend time with them. Is it fair to say every GM has ripped something off?
Oh, I'd say absolutely. I'd say every gaming system has ripped something off. So it's sort of baked into the games, right?
Right.
So yeah,
and ripping off, I mean, that certainly sounds harsh.
Yeah.
We all borrow. We're all inspired, right? And we like to inject those things that we're inspired by into our games.
Well, now, hold on. This is Thieves Cant. We're stealing it.
Okay.
We're ripping it off.
Yeah, that's true.
We're taking what we want.
Shamelessly.
And we don't even feel bad about it.
Not at all. Not at all. I shamelessly stole from The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch.
That's a great series.
It is so good. It is so good. If you've never read Scott Lynch, the Gentleman Bastard series, do yourself a favor. That is great fiction to immerse yourself in. If you want to run a city campaign that is thief-centric, you can't do better than Scott Lynch's books.
Oh, yeah. Imagine putting that Thieves Guild in your setting.
Right? What have you stolen from?
Anybody who's played a fantasy game of any kind has stolen from Tolkien, from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. How much did, the Song of Ice and Fire inspire people?
Right.
I think that brought a lot of people, I think, into fantasy gaming. It's just we go with what we know. We put our touches on it. We put our changes on it. But all of those things, they impact. You think about a sci-fi game. Well, who isn't pulling, thoughts of lightsabers and, scanners in Star Trek and all of those influences that are there? We should embrace those things.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a match in terms of genre. There have been a number of times where I've been watching some procedural crime drama, the murder plot. That would be fantastic in my D&D game. So you can lift from any genre.
That's absolutely true. And one of my biggest influences is music. I will hear a song and it will immediately put me in the mindset of, oh, you know what? It makes me envision a character. It makes me think about someone, a mindset. Maybe it's, a great warrior in combat, a sneaking rogue, whatever it is, that music sort of draws that in. And so even if I may not incorporate the music itself in the game, because it may not be appropriate in the design of that character, that's always a part of it. I've never made a character that didn't have some type of music associated with it.
A theme song.
Yeah.
Like a wrestler.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Right, because if you think about a wrestler, right, they have their song play, they have their intro, and what's the purpose of it, right? It sets a mood. It sets expectations, right? When you hear the glass break and Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out, right, you're like, all right, somebody's fixing to get whooped, right? Okay. That's as nicely as I could say it, right? So, but it's about to happen. And that's just music, right? That's just the sound of that glass breaking or the sound of that note hitting. And instantly it's recognizable and you're excited. It evokes an instant emotion. And I think it's the same way in gaming. And again, some people, I know you don't care for music when you play normally.
During play, yeah.
Because it's distracting.
I'm so easily distracted. I can't keep a lot of plates spinning in my head.
Yeah.
It's just me.
Yeah. But when I prep, I always have music on because that gets me in that mindset. It gets me in the right headspace to think about where I'm at and remain focused on what the goal is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
and so like if in the Dark Sun campaign I mentioned earlier, the music I listen to is very different than something because I want it to be very dark, simple, a lot of drums and percussion because that gets me into that headspace.
Yeah.
Whereas, if I was doing something on the Sword Coast, it would be something, lighter and more epic. So even something like music can be an inspiration.
The main idea of this tip, ask yourself, reflect on what gives you inspiration. Now, spend more time with that stuff. And time is precious. We get it. And we both have full lives. We know you do too. But whenever you've got that extra time, be intentional with it. Find inspiration. Could make your game better.
We love Game Masters because they do spend more time and effort than anyone else at the table to make a lot of fun for everyone there. Again, we are not experts by any means. We've just made a lot of mistakes.
We cannot stress that enough.
We've stumbled upon some successes. And so, I'm sure there are a lot of other people that have some stories to share there as well.
What are your GM tips? A couple places you can reach out to us. Email thievescantcast@gmail.com. We're on the socials as well, at Thieves Cant Cast. And on YouTube, Thieves Cant Podcast. I know, that one's a little different. I can't help it.
I like it.
Yeah?
I think it's nice.
Okay. So we will see you online. We look forward to hearing from you again. Share those tips. What did we leave off the list that should have been there? Chris, any closing thoughts today?
No, just keep on prepping, keep on working, keep having fun at the table.
Hey, next time we are talking character backstories. How much is too much? How much is enough? What are you looking for as a GM from your players for their backstories? We'll cover all of that and more next week.
Thank you for listening to Thieves Cant. Email thievescantcast@gmail.com.